First Contact Protocol. The research vessel. Meridian drifted silently through the cosmic void, its hull gleaming against the backdrop of distant stars. Captain Nara Voss stood on the bridge, studying the massive crystalline structure that hung in space before them like a frozen teardrop of starlight. "Readings are off the charts," Dr. Jackson Reed called from his station, his voice carrying that familiar excitement she'd fallen in love with years ago. "This thing is older than our entire solar system." Nara forced herself to focus on the mission, not on the way his dark hair caught the bridge's ambient lighting, or how his shirt stretched across his broad shoulders as he leaned over his console. Their relationship had ended 2 years ago when duty called them to different assignments, but the attraction still simmered between them like heat lightning. "Keep your distance, Doctor," she said, her tone professional despite the flutter in her chest. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Jackson glanced up, his green eyes meeting hers with a look that had nothing to do with ancient artifacts. "I always keep my distance, Captain. These days." The bridge crew pretended not to notice the tension crackling between their commanding officers. Nara cleared her throat and activated the ship's long-range scanners. "Lieutenant Morrison, take us to within scanning range." "Nice and slow." As the Meridian approached, the artifact began to pulse with an inner light that seemed to respond to their presence. Nara felt a strange pull in her chest, as if something deep within the crystal was calling to her. "Nara," Jackson said softly, using her first name for the first time in months. "The energy patterns, they're almost like a heartbeat." She moved to stand beside him at his console, close enough to smell his cologne, close enough to remember what it felt like to wake up in his arms. "Show me." His fingers danced across the controls, and the main screen displayed the artifact's energy signature. The rhythmic pulses were hypnotic, beautiful in their alien complexity. "It's trying to communicate," Jackson whispered, his hand accidentally brushing hers as they both reached for the same control. The brief contact sent electricity racing through her veins. "Captain!" Lieutenant Morrison called urgently. "The artifact is changing." The crystalline structure began to unfold like a flower, revealing chambers and corridors that defied human understanding of physics. At its heart, a soft blue light pulsed with increasing intensity. "All stop," Nara ordered, but it was too late. The artifact released a pulse of energy that washed over the Meridian like a gentle tide. For a moment, every human aboard felt a strange sensation, as if invisible hands were exploring their minds, their souls, their very essence. Nara gasped, her hand instinctively reaching for Jackson's. He caught it, squeezing tightly as the wave of alien consciousness passed through them both. In that instant, she felt everything he'd never said, his regret over their breakup, his love that had never faded, his desperate wish that duty hadn't torn them apart. The sensation faded, leaving them breathless and staring into each other's eyes. "Captain," the communications officer called, her voice tight with fear. "I'm picking up massive fleet movements on the far edge of the system. Unknown configurations, but they're heading straight for us." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Admiral Keth Zorian stood on the command deck of his flagship, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he studied the star charts. The Draknari Empire had ruled this sector for 1,000 years through superior firepower and ruthless efficiency. "Admiral," young Officer Saya reported, her voice trembling slightly. "The ancient beacon has activated." The signal came from the Outer Rim territories. Zorian's yellow eyes narrowed. The old legends spoke of sleeping artifacts that would one day awaken, heralding the return of the ancients. But those were myths, weren't they? "Prepare the fleet," he commanded. "We investigate this disturbance. If someone has awakened the old technology, they represent a threat to the Empire." But as Saya relayed the orders, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. The signal had felt different somehow, not threatening, but curious, almost hopeful. Back aboard the Meridian, alarms blared as the approaching fleet grew larger on their sensors. Nara looked at the massive armada racing toward them and then at Jackson, whose hand was still holding hers. "Whatever happens next," she said quietly, "I want you to know." "I know," he interrupted, raising their joined hands to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I've always known." As the alien fleet approached, the artifact pulsed one final time, as if sealing both species' fates. The age of innocence was over. First contact was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. Hearts across the void. The diplomatic station orbiting Earth buzzed with tension as humanity prepared for its first formal contact with an alien species. Zara Chen adjusted her formal diplomatic attire, her reflection in the mirror showing a woman trying to hide her nervousness behind professional composure. The Draknari delegation has just docked, her aide informed her. They're impressive. Zara nodded, checking her appearance one final time. As Earth's chief negotiator, the weight of two species' futures rested on her shoulders. She entered the grand conference hall just as the Draknari delegation arrived. Prince Kairos led them, his scaled skin gleaming like polished emerald, his bearing regal despite the obvious tension in his amber eyes. Unlike his warrior companions, there was something different about him, a gentleness that seemed at odds with his people's reputation. Diplomat Chen, he said in accented but perfect English, inclining his head respectfully. I am Prince Kairos of the Draknari royal house. I hope we can find understanding between our peoples. Their eyes met across the negotiation table, and Zara felt an unexpected flutter of attraction. His voice was deep and resonant, and despite his alien features, there was an undeniable magnetism about him. Your Highness, she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady, humanity welcomes this opportunity for peace. As the formal negotiations began, both found themselves stealing glances. When Prince Kairos spoke of his people's history, Zara detected pain in his words, a weariness with endless conquest that surprised her. During a recess, they found themselves alone on the station's observation deck, Earth spinning slowly below them. Your world is beautiful, Kairos said softly, standing close enough that she could see the intricate patterns in his scales. So much blue. Our homeworld is mostly red desert now, scarred by centuries of war. Is that what you want for Earth? Zara asked, her diplomatic training warring with genuine curiosity about this enigmatic prince. No, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But I fear what my father and the War Council want is irrelevant. They see weakness in mercy. Their fingers touched as they both reached for the railing, and neither pulled away. The contact sent warmth spreading through Zara's chest, dangerous feelings for a diplomat to harbor. Meanwhile, in Earth's Orbital Defense Command Center, Commander Thane Blackwood studied tactical displays with growing concern. The Draknari fleet outnumbered humanity's forces 10-1. We need those new shield generators online, he told engineer Mira Stone, who was working frantically at a nearby console. How long? Mira wiped sweat from her brow, her red hair escaping from its ponytail. 8 hours minimum. The power coupling is more complex than we anticipated. Thane moved to stand behind her, close enough to smell her shampoo. They'd been working together for weeks, their professional partnership deepening into something neither had dared acknowledge. You haven't slept in 36 hours, he observed, his hand settling gently on her shoulder. You need rest. People are counting on me, she protested, but leaned into his touch anyway. They're counting on all of us, he said, turning her chair so she faced him. But you're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. Their faces were inches apart, the stress of the situation making every moment feel precious. Thane, I know, he murmured, cupping her face in his hands. I feel it too. Their kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as weeks of suppressed attraction finally found release. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. After this is over, Thane promised, we're going to have a proper conversation about this. Mira smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in days. I'd like that. Back on the diplomatic station, Prince Kairos found Zara in her quarters after the day's failed negotiations. She'd changed from her formal attire into a simple dress that made her look younger, more vulnerable. My father has refused your peace terms, he said without preamble. The fleet will attack at dawn. Zara's shoulders sagged. Then we've failed, perhaps, Kairos said, moving closer. But not in everything. She looked up at him, seeing her own feelings reflected in his alien features. What are you saying? That in trying to prevent a war, I found something I never expected. His scaled hand touched her cheek with surprising gentleness. I found someone worth protecting. Kairos, we're from different species, different worlds. Are we so different? He asked, his thumb tracing her jawline. We both want peace. We both believe there's a better way than endless conflict. When he kissed her, it was with a passion that transcended species, a desperate hunger born of knowing their time might be measured in hours. Zara melted into his embrace, her hands exploring the alien texture of his skin, finding it warm and surprisingly soft. They made love with an intensity born of desperation and discovery, finding in each other's arms a perfect unity that their people seemed determined to destroy. As they lay entwined afterward, Zara traced patterns on Kairos's scaled chest. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now," he said, pulling her closer. "We fight for something worth saving, even if we have to fight our own people to do it." Outside their window, the Draknari fleet began moving into attack formation, and Earth's defenders scrambled to meet them. The war neither side truly wanted was about to begin. The art of war, the command center aboard Earth's primary defense station, crackled with controlled chaos as General Marcus Vale coordinated humanity's first interstellar war. His weathered face showed the strain of command as reports flooded in from across the solar system. "Draknari advance fleet has breached the outer perimeter," his aide reported. "They'll be in weapons range in 30 minutes. "Deploy the Prometheus," Vale ordered, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was unleashing. "Captain Reyes, you're clear for engagement." Captain Luna Reyes sat in the pilot's chair of humanity's most advanced warship, her hands steady on the controls despite her racing heart. The Prometheus was humanity's secret weapon, a fusion of recovered alien technology and human ingenuity that represented their only hope against the Draknari armada. "Understood. Command," she replied, her voice cool and professional. "Beginning approach vector." As the sleek ship accelerated toward the enemy fleet, Luna allowed herself a moment to think of her daughter back on Earth. Everything she was about to do was for her, for all of humanity's children who deserved a future among the stars. The Draknari ships were massive, their hulls covered in aggressive spikes and weapon arrays. But Luna had studied their tactics, their weaknesses. Humanity might be outgunned, but they weren't outthought. "Prometheus to all units," she broadcast. "Remember, we're not trying to match their firepower. We're trying to prove they can't match our determination." The first exchange of fire lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Luna danced the Prometheus between enemy shots, her ship's experimental shields absorbing what hits they couldn't avoid. When she returned fire, each shot was precise, calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum energy expenditure. Aboard the Draknari flagship, War Marshal Dex watched the human ship's performance with growing unease. His yellow eyes narrowed as the small vessel evaded attack after attack while striking back with surgical precision. "How can one ship be so effective against our entire advance guard?" he growled to his subordinates. "Sir?" Communications Officer Kira replied, her voice carefully neutral. "The humans appear to be using some form of predictive targeting system. They're anticipating our movements." Dex's scaled fist slammed onto his command chair. "Impossible. No species fights like that without decades of experience." But Kira had been secretly studying human military doctrine for weeks, falling deeper in love with their tactical creativity and, more dangerously, with one human prisoner in particular. She'd seen how they adapted, learned, evolved under pressure in ways the rigid Draknari military couldn't comprehend. In the ship's detention level, she found herself visiting the human prisoner again. Commander Jake Morrison had been captured during the first skirmish, and Kira had volunteered to interrogate him, ostensibly to gather intelligence. "You came back," Jake said as she entered his cell, his blue eyes meeting hers without fear. Over their weeks of conversations, the formal interrogations had become something else entirely. "I had to know," Kira said, her scaled hands trembling slightly. "Are your people really willing to sacrifice everything for freedom?" Jake stood, moving closer to the energy barrier between them. "Wouldn't you? If someone came to enslave your children, wouldn't you fight with everything you had?" "The Draknari don't have children the way humans do," Kira admitted. "We're bred for specific purposes. I was bred to be a communications specialist. You were born free to choose your own path." "Freedom isn't something you're born with," Jake said softly. "It's something you fight for every day. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find someone worth fighting alongside." Their eyes locked, and Kira made a decision that would change everything. She deactivated the energy barrier. Jake stepped forward carefully, not wanting to startle her. When his hand touched her scaled cheek, she leaned into the contact, her alien features softening with an expression he'd learned to recognize as longing. "If I help you," she whispered, "my people will call me a traitor. And if you don't," Jake replied, "mine will call you an enemy. But I'll know the truth, that you're someone who chose love over fear." Their kiss was gentle, exploratory, two beings from different worlds finding common ground in the simple act of caring for another. As they held each other, Kira began transmitting Draknari fleet positions and tactical plans to the human resistance, choosing love over loyalty to an empire built on conquest. Back in space, Captain Luna Reyes was proving that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their refusal to give up. The Prometheus had taken significant damage, but it kept fighting, kept dancing between the massive Draknari ships like a wasp among elephants. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "we're down to 30% shield strength. Weapons are at 60% efficiency." "Then we make every shot count," Luna replied, lining up another attack run. "Target their command ship's communication array. If we can blind them, the smaller ships will have to operate independently." As the Prometheus streaked through enemy fire, Luna thought of every human who'd ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Today they were getting their answer, and humanity would not be found wanting. The battle raged on, each side learning from the other, adapting, evolving. But in the darkness between stars, other forces were stirring. The ancient artifact's signal had awakened more than just the Draknari, and both species were about to discover that they had more in common than they ever imagined. About to begin. Shadows of the past, Doctor. Elena Cross worked feverishly in her laboratory deep beneath Earth's surface, surrounded by fragments of Draknari technology captured in the ongoing battles. Her breakthrough had come at 3 a.m, a pattern hidden in the alien energy signatures that matched something impossibly familiar. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the analysis again. The quantum resonance patterns were identical to those found in the ancient artifact discovered by the Meridian. But that would mean... Her secure terminal chimed with an incoming transmission from the front lines. The face of Ren Thorn appeared on screen, his special forces uniform torn and bloodied. "Elena, I'm sending you something that's going to change everything," he said, his voice tight with exhaustion and pain. "We found it in a Draknari command bunker. It's not like anything in their normal tech. The data packet contained scans of another crystalline structure, smaller than the first artifact, but unmistakably of the same origin." Elena's hands shook as she processed the implications. "Ren, where are you now?" she asked into her communicator. "Behind enemy lines on Kepler 442b, came his reply, distorted by interference. "The Draknari have a massive excavation site here. They're digging up more of these artifacts." Elena's blood ran cold. If both species were finding these ancient relics, then the current war might not be the accident everyone believed it to be. On Kepler 442b, Ren Thorn crouched behind the ruins of what had once been a Draknari supply depot, his reconnaissance mission having gone sideways when a patrol stumbled across his position. Plasma fire scorched the air above his head as he tried to reach his extraction point. A Draknari warrior rounded the corner, weapon raised, but instead of firing immediately, the alien hesitated. Something in the creature's stance was different, less aggressive, more conflicted. "Human," the Draknari said in accented English. "You are far from your lines." "So are you, apparently," Ren replied, keeping his weapon trained on the alien while noting the lack of standard military markings on its armor. "I am Virak," the alien said, lowering his weapon slightly. "I was cast out from my unit for questioning orders." "What kind of orders?" Virak's reptilian features twisted with what Ren was learning to recognize as disgust. "To execute prisoners, to burn civilian settlements, to turn this war into the kind of slaughter that brings no honor." An explosion rocked the ground nearby, and both warriors instinctively dove for cover. In that moment, sharing the same foxhole, species differences seemed irrelevant. "Your people fight with great courage," Virak said, his golden eyes meeting Ren's. "Even when facing certain death, you do not break." "Neither do yours," Ren admitted. "At least not the ones with honor." Another blast, closer this time. Virak made a decision that surprised them both. "This way," he said, gesturing toward a hidden passage. "I know a path to your lines. But first, there is something you must see." They moved together through the alien landscape, two soldiers from opposite sides finding common ground in their shared sense of honor. The excavation site Virak led him to was massive. Hundreds of Draknari workers uncovering a complex of ancient structures that clearly predated both civilizations. The War Marshal believes these ruins will give us ultimate power over your species, Virak explained. But I have studied the symbols. They speak not of conquest, but of unity. Back on Earth, in a field hospital near the primary battle zone, Tessa Vale worked to save lives regardless of species. General Vale's daughter had inherited his strength, but channeled it into healing rather than warfare. "Bring him here," she called to her assistants as they carried in another wounded Draknari soldier. The alien's breathing was labored, his scaled skin mottled with burn marks. As Tessa worked to stabilize him, the Draknari's eyes fluttered open. Instead of the hatred she expected, she saw only confusion and pain. "Why?" he whispered in broken English. "Why save enemy?" "Because you're not my enemy," Tessa replied, her hands gentle as she dressed his wounds. "You're a living being in pain, and I'm a doctor. That's all that matters." The Draknari warrior studied her face with growing wonder. In his culture, weakness was despised, but this human showed strength through compassion, a concept his people were only beginning to understand. "Your name?" he asked. "Tessa, and yours?" "Koroth," he replied, then after a pause, "You are not what we were told humans would be." "What were you told?" "That you were savage, cruel, without honor." Tessa smiled sadly as she finished bandaging his wounds. "Sounds like someone wanted us to hate each other. The question is why?" As she worked on other patients, human and Draknari alike, Tessa began to notice a pattern. The worst injuries came not from direct combat, but from weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum suffering. Someone was escalating this conflict deliberately, pushing both sides toward total warfare. Dr. Elena Cross's analysis was reaching the same conclusion. The ancient artifacts weren't just archaeological curiosities. They were part of an elaborate test, one that had been running for millennia. The quantum signatures suggested the artifacts were designed to identify species that had reached a certain level of technological and social development. But someone had been interfering with the test, using fear and misunderstanding to turn potential allies into enemies. "Ren," she transmitted to the commando still behind enemy lines, "you need to get back here immediately. What we're dealing with isn't just a war between two species. Someone's been manipulating both sides." On Kepler 442b, Ren and Virak stood before the largest artifact yet discovered, its crystalline surface pulsing with the same rhythm they'd both learned to associate with the ancient technology. "The inscriptions," Virak said, pointing to symbols carved into the structure's base. "They're not in Draknari. They're not in any language either of our peoples knows." Ren activated his scanner, recording everything. "Elena's going to want to see this. Whatever this civilization was, they're the key to understanding why our people are really fighting." As if responding to their presence, the artifact began to glow brighter, and both warriors felt the same sensation the crew of the Meridian had experienced. Invisible hands examining their thoughts, their intentions, their capacity for growth. In that moment of contact, both Ren and Virak saw flashes of the truth. Their species were children of the same ancient race, separated by time and space, but sharing the same fundamental spark. The current war wasn't destiny. It was a deviation from a path that was meant to lead to reunion and mutual growth. "We have to stop this," Virak said, his voice filled with new understanding. "Our peoples are supposed to be together, not destroying each other." "Then let's go make that happen," Ren replied, clasping the alien warrior's scaled hand in a gesture of friendship that transcended species barriers. But as they prepared to leave the excavation site, neither realized they were being watched by forces that had spent centuries ensuring this moment would never come. When stars align, the revelation struck both fleets simultaneously as ancient memories flooded the minds of every human and Draknari in the system. Through the artifact's quantum resonance, warriors on both sides experienced visions of their shared origin, a magnificent civilization that had seeded the galaxy with life before ascending to a higher plane of existence. Aboard the human flagship, General Vale staggered as the memories hit him. "All ships, cease fire!" he commanded, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Stand down immediately." Admiral Zorian was experiencing the same revelations aboard the Draknari command ship, his scaled features twisted with shock. By the ancient ones, he whispered. What have we done? The answer came in fragments. Memories of extremist factions from both species who had discovered the truth years ago and conspired to prevent the prophesied reunion. They had manipulated events, fed misinformation, and stoked the flames of war because they feared what unity might mean for their power. Captain Nara Voss and Dr. Jackson Reed stood together on the bridge of the Meridian, watching as the artifact revealed its final secret. Holographic images showed the ancient civilization at its height. Beings who had transcended the physical limitations of species to become something greater. They didn't disappear, Jackson breathed, his hand finding Nara's. They evolved, and they've been waiting for their children to do the same. The artifacts were tests, Nara realized. Not just of our technology, but of our ability to choose unity over division. Across space, Prince Kiros broke away from the Draknari formation, his personal ship heading toward the diplomatic station where Zara waited. His father's voice crackled over the communication system, demanding his return, but Kiros had made his choice. Father, he transmitted back, I am exactly where I belong. He found Zara in the observation lounge, tears streaming down her face as she watched the fleets pulling back from the brink of mutual annihilation. It's over, she whispered as he took her in his arms. No, Kiros replied, his lips finding hers in a kiss that tasted of hope and new beginnings. It's just beginning. On Earth, Commander Thane Blackwood and Engineer Mira Stone worked together to reconfigure humanity's defense systems into beacons of peace. Their earlier passionate embrace now feeling like a lifetime ago as they focused on the monumental task of rebuilding. The power grid modifications are complete, Mira reported, her voice filled with wonder. The defense platforms are now transmitting friendship protocols in 17 Draknari dialects. Thane pulled her close, spinning her around in celebration. We did it. We actually did it. Their kiss was interrupted by cheers from the control room as reports flooded in of Draknari ships responding with their own peace signals. In the Draknari detention facility, Communications Officer Kira finally freed Commander Jake Morrison from his cell. Her act of rebellion now transformed into heroism by the changing tide of war. My people will need guides, she told him as they embraced. Humans who can help us learn what we've forgotten about cooperation and growth. And we'll need teachers, Jake replied, who can show us the wisdom your people have gained through centuries of discipline and structure. Their love, once forbidden, had become a symbol of the bridge their species would build together. Captain Luna Reyes piloted the Prometheus back to Earth, her ship scarred but triumphant. As she prepared for landing, her communication system lit up with a priority message from her daughter. Mom, the young voice said, filled with excitement, there are aliens on the news, and they're not scary at all. Some of them are even pretty. Can we be friends with them? Luna smiled, tears of relief flowing freely. Yes, sweetheart. I think we're going to be very good friends. On Kepler 442b, Renthorn and Virak emerged from the excavation site to find human and Draknari forces working together to preserve the ancient ruins. The warrior who had been branded a traitor was now hailed as a hero of peace. Your daughter's medical work saved hundreds of lives, Virak told General Vale when they finally met in person. Both human and Draknari. She showed us what true strength looks like. Tessa Vale blushed at the praise, but her focus remained on the future. There's so much we can learn from each other. Draknari regenerative medicine combined with human surgical techniques could revolutionize healthcare. In her underground laboratory, Dr. Elena Cross worked alongside Draknari scientists to decode the final mysteries of the artifacts. The quantum resonance patterns revealed a star map, not showing where to go, but showing where their ancient ancestors had originated. It's an invitation, she explained to the joint council that now governed both species' interaction. When we're ready, when we've truly learned to work together, we can follow this path to find them. And then? Asked Prince Kiros, who now served as liaison between the Draknari royal house and the human diplomatic corps. Then we take the next step in evolution, Elena replied. Together. As the months passed, the transformation was remarkable. Joint colonies were established. Draknari engineering prowess combined with human creativity led to technological breakthroughs neither species could have achieved alone. Children of both races learned each other's languages and customs, growing up in a galaxy where diversity was celebrated rather than feared. The ancient artifacts, once triggers for war, became centers of learning and cooperation. The beings who had created them finally revealed themselves, not as gods or conquerors, but as parents welcoming their children home. Captain Nara Voss and Dr. Jackson Reed were married in a ceremony attended by representatives from both species, their love story becoming legend among those who believed in the power of unity over division. Prince Kairos and Zara Chen established the first interspecies diplomatic academy, training a new generation of leaders who saw no barriers between human and Draknari interests. And in the depths of space, new ships bearing the combined symbols of both civilizations set out to explore the galaxy, carrying the message that had nearly been lost forever, that love, understanding, and cooperation were the true measures of an advanced civilization. The war that had threatened to destroy both species had instead forged them into something greater, a union of hearts and minds that would light the way for countless other worlds to follow. As the Ancient Ones had always known it would be, when the stars finally aligned, love conquered all.